I shall move on to your next colleague from National Parks Board. Okay, so the next speaker from National Parks Board is Mr. Sean Chia, veterinarian, biosecurity and quarantine services. No, yes, it's you, Sean. Yeah.
Yes, it's me.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Pardon me. Let me just repeat. So, Mr. Sean Chia, veterinarian, biosecurity and quarantine services, industry and biosecurity management, animal and veterinary service. So Sean works to safeguard animal and public health by ensuring that animals in Singapore are safe, are healthy and free of disease. As mentioned earlier, the AVS is a cluster that works actively with the community such as pet owners and businesses, animal welfare groups, and the general public to protect and promote the welfare of animals through regulation and education, such as encouraging responsible pet ownership. So he will be sharing more about improved traceability of licensed pet dogs. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I do apologize. I might be facing some connection issues, so please let me know if you can't hear me properly. I'll try to speak as slowly as possible.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. I can hear you clearly.
All right. Good. Okay, so I'm Sean. Thank you again for coming to listen to our talk. I'm here to talk to you today about improving traceability of licensed pet dogs. Here at NParks, like what we explained before, we look at public health, we look at managing animals in our community to ensure the best we can for them. Okay, next slide, please. Today's talk, I'll talk about what I mean by pet traceability in Singapore, the current process that goes through, the issues and challenges that we are facing now, followed by the problem statement and the ideal solution that we are looking at. Next slide, please. So a background for everyone who's not familiar. Right now, when I talk about pet traceability, I mean that all own pet dogs in Singapore, so specifically pet dogs, be microchip. And following that, they need to be licensed so that NParks knows where these dogs are in case of a disease outbreak and are able to track them. Traceability also allows us to better address the following, such as safeguarding public health and animal health, trace and manage disease outbreaks that I've spoken before, and also when there are lost animals, we are able to identify these lost animals and return them to their rightful owners. Next slide, please. For everyone who's not familiar, when I talk about microchip, I am actually talking about a very small size of grain of rice transponder that is used as the identifier for the animal, because each microchip contains a unique combination of numbers, so it may be from 9 to 15 digits that serves as their, I guess if you're putting in Singapore context, is their IC number. In order to read this transponder, you require a proprietary microchip scanner. In the video, you can see that I'm using a scanner to scan the microchip that is under the skin of the dog. You can't see it because it's like I said, it's injected under the skin of the dog. There are certain ISO standards that these microchips meet because they're being manufactured commercially outside. And the ISO standards are in the slide below. The microchip is also a permanent identification system. So it's going to be very difficult to remove the microchip. This is to prevent any kind of fraud of removing microchips and putting them in different dogs. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first step is microchipping to give the dog a unique identifier. Second step is the licensing portion. When we talk about licensing, it's actually under the Animals and Birds Act of Singapore, which means it's by law, all dogs are required to be licensed. This is a national register of dogs, where owners of dogs will have to input their details, such as their address, their name and contact number. This is to ensure that whenever a lost dog is found and handed over to NParks, we can easily identify the dog using the microchip number and then trace it back to their owners and address and contact them just in case you have lost your dog. Okay, and besides that, it's also for traceability in the event of outbreak of disease. So for example, if you find disease in a dog, we are able to identify the dog's microchip number, followed by looking at where it's from, and possibly contact trace and see where the dog has been by interviewing people and asking. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a quick summary of how the current process is. Firstly, a pet owner owns a dog, and we implant a microchip, and this is usually carried out by the veterinarian. The veterinarian will then scan the microchip because it's a proprietary microchip scanner, and not everyone can easily access this microchip. We have to record down the number manually, so write down the 9 to 15-digit number. You have to log into our portal, so our pet animal licensing system, and register using their SingPass for a license online. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the issues and the challenges that we are facing with this current system. Firstly, it requires a microchip scanner to read the microchip. So for example, if I want to identify a person, I can easily ask the person to take out the IC, and anyone can read the IC number and note it down. But if I have a lost dog, I can't identify the dog without a microchip scanner. So if a lost dog is found in public, any member of public will not be able to identify the dog because they simply cannot scan this number. Secondly, the microchip in itself is a transponder and does not have an easy traceability feature. So what I mean is that whenever a lost dog is found, we have to bring it to a vet clinic or bring it to NParks. NParks will then have to scan the dog, followed by logging into a database to identify the owner, and then contact the owner via their contact number. And if the owner is uncontactable or the address on our system is not updated, we'll be probably unable to reunite this lost dog with their owner. The third issue, is that usually people don't follow through all the way with all the steps. For example, after they microchip the dog, many owners think that the job is done. They don't have to carry on with any more further steps. But actually, we do require them to go online to our system to license their dogs. And many owners do not know or are unaware of this step. Next slide, please. This brings us to our problem statement. So how might we firstly improve the traceability of pet dogs for disease investigation? And secondly, how do we effectively identify and trace back to pet owners easily and accurately? A new solution would be, for example, a unique signal and sensor. Also could be a device that's a unique signal and sensor to determine the identity of the animal and is read easily by a very accessible device such as our handphone. This solution will also allow us to easily connect this identification or identifier to the owner's information. This should also be easy to use, nothing too complicated. And also, since we are dealing with many details such as addresses, handphone numbers, it should be also quite secure in protecting personal data. The first solution I talked about was the current solution of having microchips. We are here to make sure that the high standards of animal welfare are met. We try to we try not to cause too much or I suppose pain to the animal when we're trying to implement a solution and meet high standards of animal welfare. Next slide, please. So possible solutions and current constraints. For example, what we could think of, is a microchip using NFC technology instead. NFC technology is easily available to members of the public using their handphones. So I can just easily whip out my handphone and scan a dog instead of having to buy a proprietary microchip scanner. Also, that this microchip shouldn't be too big and be able to be read from a distance. If the size of the microchip is too big, it's going to be very painful to put it under the skin of the animal, and this will be poor welfare outcomes for the dog. We also thought about smart tags and collars, but the consideration is that as the dog grows bigger, these collars will also have to be replaced. Is that a secure solution if it's replaceable? I think we need to think a bit more about that. It could also work in tandem with the existing RFID microchip. For example, I can scan the microchip, read the microchip number, and tag it to the smart tag. Other things that we could think of, for example, facial recognition, but this has not been tested for in animals, and we do not know how effective can it be, or is there even technology out there that can support such a thing. And lastly, not just a solution of the microchip, but we're also talking about an application that will connect this identifier to our licensing portal. So making the process of identifying the animal and licensing the animal quite seamless. Next slide, please. Yeah, we have an example solution when I was talking about a NFC microchip. The red arrow points to the current solution. So like I've talked about before, the conventional microchip, we scan the microchip, we update the microchip number, we log in to our licensing system, and these are extra steps that need to be done. But for example, using a NFC microchip, which I can scan using my handphone number, I wouldn't have to use a specialized scanner. I would just scan using my phone, and the data from my phone can be easily uploaded into our licensing system through the use of an application, making it a one-step process instead of a multiple-step process. Thank you very much. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Now we will just take some more questions.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. I should have introduced you right at the beginning. My apologies.
That's all right.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. There is a question from Kelvin Ma. Are you seeking out this solution only for dogs?
Yes. So currently, we have to act according to our law, and under the Animals and Birds Act, pet dogs need to be licensed. But of course, if we can in the future expand this technology to other types of animals, that would be also quite ideal, quite good.
So just to expand on the question, is it optional? Say, for example, if I'm an owner of a pedigree cat, is it possible to implant the chip?
Yes.
A pedigree cat.
Yes. So right now, cats are also being microchipped, but this is usually a personal owner's decision, just in case their cats get lost. Just for some background, microchip numbers are currently, the databases are currently held, not held, but the companies that create and make these microchips have their own microchip number databases that they encourage owners to register their microchips and address. So that's how one can also trace these dogs.
Okay, so there is a question from Jason Lim, right? He typed it in the chat. So Jason, if you can, for future questions, type in the Q&A section. So his question is, can we commercialize the solution out of Singapore? Are there any restrictions? In other words,
I do not think there are any restrictions right now.
Okay, so if they are successful with NParks, they can obviously sell it to other parts of the world.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So Hari Nai has a question. I'm not sure it's quite related to the challenge, but it's quite interesting one. So since there are over 70,000 dogs in Singapore, wouldn't microchipping them be quite a large undertaking? Would it be feasible?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. That's actually quite a good question. If you're talking about microchipping all of them, yes, it is like quite a huge undertaking, and in terms of getting owners on board and try to convince people to use it, that would be quite large effort. So I think what we are looking out for today is new technologies so that we can slowly replace this way, or at least encourage people to move on to other types of technologies that would be easier for us to keep track of to enhance traceability in animals, and as well make it easier for them to obey the law of licensing and their pet dogs.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So there is a question from Jason Kumar. Could you please elaborate what you mean by needs to function without regular maintenance?
Yes, so we are taking reference from a microchip, where once we implant the microchip, we are not there to constantly make sure that it's working, because we know it works. That's one. We do not have to clean it all the time because it's under the sterile. So we're looking for a solution where once we put it on, we don't have to keep attaching it or updating it to a computer, or making sure that it's working, because you want to have quite good assurance that it is indeed working.
Thank you. Okay, what other questions are there? Okay. Frank has actually shared one of the a URL for some of the tags, so I guess we can check this out after the call. Another question from Hari Nair: would getting images of licensed dogs' noses be something AVS would be able to do with existing infrastructure?
Yes, that's quite an interesting concept. I think with existing infrastructure, can I clarify what does he mean by that? As in, does he mean that we have enough dogs to try it on, or?
I guess with the systems that you have in place, with the systems and hardware that you have in place at the vets.
I would think it's a bit of a challenge, because we do not actively take pictures of dogs' noses. But if a solution is able to do that quickly, I'm sure we can explore something like that.
Okay. So, Hari, I don't quite understand your question. So is there a pipeline to collect this data from owners? So I think collecting of data from owners is mandated by law, because you have to register your dog. So all that data is captured in a central database managed by AVS. Is that correct?
Yes, so by law, you do have to put in your contact details. So that will be, I suppose, the pipeline.
Okay. Okay, got it. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? Okay, I don't know if you can see this question from Frank. How about new fashion of earrings, just like the plastic ID tags on cows? No,
Yes, so I think I'll take that question. It's all right.
Sure.
I think that we've definitely heard of these things before, but to explain to everyone for some context would be that when we talk about cows and sheep, these are mainly livestock bred in large numbers. And we do need a commercial solution that is easy for a large application, or say a herd of 500 cows. Whereas pet dogs are indeed pet dogs. People are a bit more sensitive when it comes to putting things, I suppose, outside third-party objects on the animal.
Alters their
and ears are
cosmetic.
quite sensitive.
Yeah, it alters their cosmetic outlook.
Yeah, to put it that way.
Okay. Yeah. Sean, if you don't mind, we just take more questions while waiting for the next speaker to come online.
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay. So please keep the questions coming, everybody. Okay, so one from Hari Nair. Regarding the mobile app part, since most people who come across a distressed dog may not be dog owners, would a web app be more desirable than the mobile app ecosystem?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I haven't really think about this solution, but I suppose that would be okay as well, just as long members of the public can easily identify the dog, like what I said before, and access this database and be contactable.
Okay, let me see. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, a question from Jasper. Could you please explain more about the traceability you want to achieve? Real-time localization, a map to show where the dogs been, or only record when dogs run into certain locations, for example, geofencing, or the use case is just purely for identification of lost dogs or potentially stray dogs?
Yes, thank you for the question. That's a great question.
Thanks, Jasper.
We are not looking for real-time localization. I think, for example, if I understand it correctly, it means that, for example, quarantine technology where we need to keep the animal in a single place and we need to know whether it gets breached the boundary. So we're not looking for that kind of technology at this point. We are looking at what you said before. So for example, our current technology, say trace together or safe entry, lets us know whether this animal has been to this place, has entered this dog run, for example. So I think along those lines is what we have in mind. But of course, if solvers can give us really good solutions apart from that, you are definitely more than welcome to come talk to us.
Okay. So in order to assist with traceability, would a scanner of NFC tags or similar tags installed at dog runs, major parks under NParks purview be something that could be accomplished?
Yes, so I believe that if this technology does work out well, and it really helps with improving traceability and disease control for animals, then NParks has the incentive to carry out the installation of these devices.
Awesome. Okay. Frank, would an extension like this help? Yes, we would take a look at this after the session. Thank you, Frank. Okay, any other questions, anyone? So maybe I'll just take 2 last questions before I let you go, Sean. Sorry, our next speaker, we're waiting for our next speaker. So sorry, Sean.
That's all right. Happy to be here to answer questions.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions, anyone? Okay, so I don't think we have, oh, just a minute. So Patrick Tan. Okay. There are a few Patrick Tans. Okay.
I've renamed myself actually. Oh, let me just rename myself. Patrick
you're
Tan
Kelly.
Sentosa.
You're Kelly, is that right?
No, Patrick here. Kelly's already in though.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, hi, Kelly. I believe because the link is the same.
Okay, my apologies.
Okay.
Okay, I'll let you go, Sean. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. I move on to the next speaker. And if there are any questions to the solvers, you just please, for Sean, just hang online. You can type in some of the answers and check out some of the links that Frank has so generously shared. And yeah, thank you for joining us today, Sean, from NParks.
Thank you so much.
From AVS. Thank you. Okay.